What if the empath doesn't explode, but disappears? What if their loudest scream is silence, and no one even notices? And when they do, the world keeps spinning. Because the world never needed the empath. It needed what the empath could give. You know her. The friend who always asks how you're doing, but never mentions her own pain. The colleague who stays late to help everyone else meet their deadlines while her own projects suffer. The partner who apologizes for things that aren't even her fault, who says sorry like a prayer she hopes will keep the peace. She's the emotional mirror of every room she enters. The one who feels the tension crackling beneath polite conversation. The one who smooths over awkward silences and remembers everyone's birthdays, anniversaries, and exactly how they like their coffee. You've seen her at family gatherings, quietly managing everyone's emotions while her own needs go unspoken. She's the friend who texts you back immediately, even when she's falling apart. The one who gives advice she wishes someone would give her, love she desperately wants to receive. But here's what Carl Jung understood that most people miss. The helper is also the most hidden person in the room. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung wrote, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The empath carries a wound so deep, so invisible, that even she doesn't recognize it as a wound. It feels like love. It feels like kindness. It feels like who she is. But Jung would call it something else, a survival strategy masquerading as virtue. The wound whispers, I disappear to be loved. She overfunctions so others can underfunction. She absorbs criticism so others feel safe. She gives her energy freely, hoping that if she's useful enough, valuable enough, selfless enough, someone might finally see her. Really see her. Not just what she can do, but who she is when she's not doing anything for anyone. But what happens when the empath finally stops performing love? What happens when she realizes that her loudest scream, her complete, devastating silence, goes completely unnoticed? What happens when she discovers that the people who claim to love her have never actually seen her at all? Take Emma, 32 years old, marketing director at a tech startup, the friend everyone calls when their world falls apart. She's been the emotional glue holding her family together since she was 7 years old and her parents started fighting. The mediator, the peacekeeper, the translator between her mother's passive aggression and her father's explosive anger. Emma learned early that her worth was measured by her ability to make other people comfortable. If she could just be good enough, helpful enough, understanding enough, maybe her parents would stop screaming. Maybe her little brother would stop crying. Maybe the chaos would calm down. And it worked. Sort of. Emma became indispensable. The responsible one. The one who never caused problems, who always had solutions, who made everyone else's life easier. But Emma is drowning now, and no one can see it because she's drowning quietly. She wakes up every morning already exhausted, not from what she has to do that day, but from what she knows she'll absorb. Her sister's anxiety about her failing marriage. Her mother's bitter complaints about their father, who left 3 years ago but still haunts every family conversation. Her coworkers' stress about deadlines and office politics that somehow becomes her responsibility to manage. Her phone buzzes with text after text. Friends needing advice. Family members needing emotional support. Colleagues needing her to fix what they broke. Stop reading for a moment. Check your phone. How many people are waiting for something from you right now? This is the empath's invisible burden. They don't just feel their own emotions. They become the container for everyone else's unfelt feelings. Their nervous system doesn't distinguish between their anxiety and their mother's anxiety, their grief and their friend's grief, their anger and their partner's unexpressed rage. Jung called this participation mystique, the unconscious merging with others' psychic contents. The empath loses the boundary between self and other, between what's theirs to carry and what belongs to someone else. They become a psychic sponge, absorbing whatever emotional mess others refuse to clean up. Emma's apartment is immaculate, but her inner world is chaos. She knows exactly how to organize everyone else's problems, but she hasn't checked in with her own needs in months. Years, maybe When was the last time someone asked Emma how she's really doing and waited for an honest answer? When was the last time Emma even knew what an honest answer would be? The empath develops what Jung called the persona, the mask we wear to survive in the world. But their mask is particularly insidious because it doesn't look like a mask at all. It looks like virtue. It looks like love. Their persona whispers, "I'm only valuable when I'm needed." And so they become indispensable. The unofficial therapist for their friend group. The reliable one who never cancels plans, never says no, never admits they're struggling. The person everyone dumps their emotional trash on because empaths make it look so easy to carry. Emma's friends call her their rock. Her family calls her their angel. Her co-workers call her a team player. But Jung knew something that empaths discover too late. The persona eventually becomes a prison. The mask grows into their face. The role becomes their identity. And the person underneath, the real person with real needs and real limits, gets buried so deep they forget she ever existed. Emma starts to notice things. Small things at first, like cracks in a foundation that's been weakening for years. When she doesn't immediately respond to a text, people assume she's angry. Not busy, not tired, not entitled to a moment of her own time. Angry. When she mentions feeling overwhelmed, people tell her she needs to practice self-care, as if the problem is her attitude and not their expectations. When she finally expresses a need, asks for help, requests support, admits she's struggling, she's told she's being dramatic, needy, or not like herself. The people in her life have become addicted to her giving. They've never learned to self-soothe, to process their own emotions, to carry their own psychological weight. Because Emma was always there to do it for them. She realizes something that makes her stomach drop and her heart race. She's not loved for who she is. She's loved for what she provides. Her value to others is entirely conditional on her ability to meet their emotional needs while having none of her own. And that realization changes everything. But change doesn't happen overnight for empaths. They're too well-trained in self-sacrifice to suddenly start putting themselves first. Instead, the awakening happens slowly, like a tide pulling back to reveal what was always there but never seen. Emma starts paying attention to her energy levels. She notices that certain people drain her completely while others fill her up. She notices that her people-pleasing behaviors actually come from fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as selfish or bad. Jung understood that beneath every persona lies the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, repressed, or denied. The empath's shadow is massive, and it's been growing in the dark for years. Her shadow contains all the rage she never expressed, all the time she said it's fine when it wasn't fine, all the needs she never honored, all the boundaries she never set, all the times she chose peace over truth, comfort over authenticity, other people's approval over her own well-being. Her shadow holds years of quiet resentment, the exhaustion of being everyone's emotional support animal, the loneliness of being seen as infinitely strong when she feels infinitely fragile, the grief of realizing that her deepest fear might be true. If she stopped giving, she'd be abandoned. But here's what most people don't understand about the empathic shadow. It doesn't explode in dramatic fashion. It doesn't rage or throw tantrums or demand attention. It simply stops. Emma starts withdrawing, not dramatically, not with angry declarations or ultimatums, just slightly, like a plant that stops growing toward a light that was never really there. She doesn't immediately return every call. She stops volunteering for extra work. She says, "I can't tonight," without providing a detailed explanation and apology. She stops asking how everyone else is doing before they ask about her. These seem like small changes, tiny adjustments. But for people who've grown accustomed to Emma's endless availability, they feel seismic. And the world doesn't collapse. Her family doesn't fall apart. Her friends don't die from having to process their own emotions for once. But something else happens that cuts deeper than any catastrophe. No one notices. Not really. Her absence, the absence of her constant giving, her emotional labor, her endless availability goes completely undetected. She's been running herself into the ground to be indispensable, and it turns out she was actually invisible. The very people she thought needed her most don't even register that she's pulling back. They're too busy with their own lives, their own problems, their own needs. Emma has been the supporting character in everyone else's story for so long that when she starts writing her own, no one bothers to read it. This is the moment that breaks empaths, when they realize they've been performing love for an audience that was never actually watching. The most terrifying thing, Jung wrote, is to accept oneself completely. For Emma, this moment of complete self-acceptance comes on a Tuesday evening in November. She's sitting in her car outside her sister's house, engine running, heat blasting against the November cold. She's about to go inside for what she knows will be another 3-hour emotional marathon. Her sister Jessica will pour wine and launch in her latest crisis. The same marital problems she's been complaining about for 2 years, but refuses to actually address. Emma has given advice. She's bought self-help books that Jessica never reads. She's offered to pay for couples therapy that Jessica claims she's too busy for. She's listened to the same complaints, the same circular thinking, the same requests for sympathy without any intention of change. Tonight, Emma was supposed to help Jessica figure out whether to leave her husband. Again, for the 15th time. But sitting in that car, Emma suddenly sees it. Really sees it. She's not helping. She's enabling. She's allowing Jessica to avoid the discomfort of actually dealing with her problems by providing a convenient emotional dumping ground. Emma has become the place where Jessica's pain goes to die, not to heal. Emma turns off the car and drives home. Her sister texts 3 times that evening. "Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? You're scaring me." But for the first time in her adult life, Emma doesn't rush to reassure someone else's anxiety. She doesn't explain or justify or smooth things over. She doesn't take responsibility for someone else's emotional regulation. She simply doesn't respond. This is the empath is true snap. Not an explosion of anger or a dramatic confrontation. Not a breakdown or a blow-up. It's something far more profound, a quiet, decisive turning inward. Jung called this the return of the repressed, when we finally confront the parts of ourselves we've abandoned, denied, or forgotten. Emma sits in her living room that night and looks around at her life, really looks for the first time in years. She sees the stack of self-help books she bought for other people, the thank you cards from friends who appreciated her support but never offered it in return, the calendar full of other people's needs and empty of her own desires. She sees a life she built entirely around other people's comfort, a personality constructed from what others expected, a self so thoroughly erased that she's not even sure who she is when she's not being useful to someone. Her apartment is decorated in colors she thinks other people will like. Her closet is full of clothes that make her look approachable and safe. Her fridge is stocked with foods her friends enjoy when they come over. But what does Emma like? What does Emma want? What does Emma need? She realizes she doesn't know. This is the wound that breaks empaths open. The realization that they've been performing love instead of receiving it, giving authenticity while accepting crumbs. But here's what Jung understood about psychological breakdowns. They're not endings. They're births. The death of who we thought we were makes space for who we actually are. Emma doesn't have a dramatic confrontation with Jessica the next day. She doesn't make angry speeches or demand apologies. She doesn't try to explain why she's been neglecting herself for decades or educate people about emotional labor. She simply starts choosing herself. When her mother calls to complain about Emma's father, the same complaints Emma has heard 1,000 times, the same circular victim narrative that never leads to action, Emma says, "That sounds really hard, Mom. I hope you can find a way to work through it." And then she changes the subject. When her coworker tries to dump a last-minute project on her because you're so good at everything, Emma says, "I'm not available for that, but I'm confident you'll figure it out." No elaborate explanation, no guilt, no apology for having boundaries. When Jessica demands to know why Emma is acting weird and being distant, Emma says something that terrifies them both. "I'm not acting weird. I'm acting different, and that might be uncomfortable for you, but it's necessary for me. The people in Emma's life don't understand this new version of her. They push back. They guilt trip. They accuse her of being selfish, cold, unrecognizable, not the Emma we know. And Emma realizes something profound. They're not upset because she's hurting them. They're upset because she's no longer allowing them to hurt her. Her withdrawal threatens the entire ecosystem of emotional dysfunction she's been enabling. Without Emma to absorb their anxiety, regulate their emotions, and provide endless empathy, they're forced to confront their own psychological work. Some people in Emma's life rise to this challenge. They apologize for taking her for granted. They start reciprocating. They begin to see her as a whole person rather than a function. But others reveal their true nature. They escalate their demands. They play victim. They try to guilt her back into the old dynamic where her needs don't matter and their emotions are her responsibility. Jung wrote, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become." Emma is choosing to become visible to herself, even if it means becoming invisible to everyone else. She's choosing sovereignty over safety, truth over peace, self-respect over external approval. And it's the loneliest, most liberating thing she's ever done. What relationships in your life would change if you stopped being who they need you to be and started being who you actually are? Take a moment to really consider this question. Picture the people in your life, your family, your friends, your romantic partner, your colleagues. Which relationships are built on genuine connection, and which ones depend on your willingness to be small, manageable, and endlessly giving? Some bridges have to burn for authentic relationships to be built. Some people have to be disappointed so that you can stop being disappointing to yourself. This is what Jung meant when he said that individuation is often a lonely process. When you stop being who others need you to be, some people will resist the change. They'll try to guilt you back into your old role. They'll make you feel selfish for having needs, difficult for having boundaries, cold for refusing to absorb their emotions. Emma is learning this lesson slowly, painfully, beautifully. She's discovering that the people who truly love her will adapt to her boundaries. And the people who can adapt never actually loved her. They loved what she did for them. Jung called this process individuation, becoming whole, even if it means being misunderstood. It's the most important psychological work a person can do, and the most difficult. For empaths like Emma, individuation means learning to distinguish between empathy and absorption, between helping and enabling, between love and codependence. 3 months into her quiet revolution, Emma discovers something remarkable. She actually liked herself. Without the constant drain of managing other people's emotions, she has energy for her own life. She reads books she wants to read, not books she thinks will help her understand other people better. She takes the pottery class she's been putting off for 5 years. She sits in silence without feeling guilty, without wondering who needs her attention. She learns to feel her own feelings without immediately trying to fix them or make them more palatable for others. She experiences anger without rushing to transform it into understanding. She feels sadness without apologizing for it. This is revolutionary for someone who was taught that her emotions were inconvenient, that her needs were selfish, that her value came from her ability to make others comfortable. Emma starts saying no without elaborate explanations. No becomes a complete sentence. She stops justifying her boundaries, apologizing for her limits, or cushioning her refusals with excessive kindness. Her relationships shift dramatically. Some people drift away, the energy vampires who were only there for what she could provide. These losses sting, but they also clarify. Emma realizes she was never really in relationship with these people. She was in service to them, but other relationships deepen in unexpected ways. Her brother David, who she'd never been particularly close to, starts calling more often. "You seem different," he says during one of these calls. "More present, like you're actually here instead of managing everyone else." Emma realizes she's been so busy being everything to everyone that she'd never been anything to anyone. including herself. Her friendship with her colleague Rachel transforms from polite workplace interactions to genuine connection. Rachel later admits, "I always wanted to get to know you better, but you seemed so busy taking care of everyone else. I didn't think you had space for real friendship. What part of yourself have you silenced just to feel loved? What aspects of your authentic self are you hiding because you're afraid people won't accept them?" Emma starts expressing her actual opinions instead of mirroring what she thinks others want to hear. She disagrees with people without immediately apologizing. She shares her struggles without minimizing them or rushing to make others feel better about her pain. This is Jung's transcendent function in action, the integration of conscious and unconscious, persona and shadow, the self she performed and the self she abandoned. Emma discovers that true empathy doesn't require self-erasure. In fact, the more solid her sense of self becomes, the more she can genuinely feel for others without losing herself in the process. She can hold space for someone's pain without taking it on. She can offer support without sacrificing her own well-being. She stops rescuing people from the consequences of their choices. When Jessica calls crying about another fight with her husband, Emma listens with compassion but doesn't offer solutions. "That sounds really painful," she says. "What do you think you want to do about it?" She stops performing emotional labor that isn't appreciated or reciprocated. When her mother launches into her usual victim narrative, Emma says, "I care about you, Mom, but I've noticed this conversation leaves me feeling drained. Can we talk about something else?" She stops proving her worth through endless giving. Instead, she starts choosing who gets her energy, who deserves her time, who has earned the privilege of her emotional investment. "The privilege of a lifetime," Jung wrote, "is to become who you truly are." Emma is becoming true, not nice, not convenient, not endlessly available. True. The process isn't linear. Some days, she slides back into old patterns. She over-explains. She says yes when she means no. She absorbs someone's anxiety and carries it around like it's hers. But she's developing what Jung called psychological differentiation, the ability to distinguish between self and other, between what's hers to feel and what belongs to someone else. She's learning that boundaries aren't walls, they're definitions. They define where she ends and others begin. They protect her energy so she can choose how to spend it rather than having it stolen by whoever demands the most. 6 months into this transformation, Emma runs into an old college friend at a coffee shop. "You look different," her friend observes, studying Emma's face. "Calmer, more solid." Emma smiles. She is different. She's not the frantic, anxious, overgiving person she used to be. She's not constantly scanning the room for who needs what from her, not mentally managing everyone else's comfort level. She's present, actually present, not performing presence while her mind races through everyone else's problems. She's learned something that Jung knew, but that empaths have to discover through painful experience. You cannot love others more than you love yourself without it eventually becoming toxic to everyone involved. The empath didn't disappear. She returned to herself. 1 year later, Emma's life looks completely different. She loves more selectively now. She forgives without forgetting. She gives without erasing herself in the process. She helps others without sacrificing her own needs. Her sister Jessica eventually adjusted to the new dynamic. Without Emma to absorb her marital stress, Jessica finally went to therapy. She and her husband are working on their issues instead of just complaining about them. Her coworkers learned to manage their own stress and deadlines. Her mother stopped using Emma as an emotional dumping ground and started processing her own feelings about the divorce. And the people who couldn't adjust, they revealed themselves to be exactly what Emma suspected. They never loved her. They loved what she did for them. This distinction changed everything for Emma. She realized that unconditional love, the kind she'd been giving freely, shouldn't be unconditional. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's enabling. Care without limits isn't care, it's codependence. Jung understood something profound about human nature. We don't fear the dark in others. We fear the light. Emma's quiet revolution threatens people because it holds up a mirror to their own emotional laziness. Her boundaries force them to confront their own avoidance. Her self-respect highlights their self-abandonment. But Emma is no longer responsible for other people's emotional education. She's not the teacher, the healer, the forever available support system. She's simply herself, complete, unbroken, untouchable. She's learned to receive love as well as give it. She's in a relationship now with someone who loves her for who she is, not what she does for them. Someone who gives as much as they take, who sees her needs as valid, who doesn't expect her to be endlessly available. Emma's apartment is decorated in colors she loves. Her closet contains clothes that make her feel beautiful, not just approachable. Her calendar includes time for her own desires, not just other people's needs. She has energy now, real energy, not the frantic, borrowed energy of someone running on adrenaline and people-pleasing, but the steady, sustainable energy of someone who knows her worth and protects it. She's learned something that Jung tried to teach, but that empaths must experience to understand. The shadow isn't the enemy. The shadow contains not just the dark aspects we've rejected, but the light we've hidden. Emma's shadow contained her anger, yes, but it also contained her strength, her standards, her ability to say no, her right to have needs, her permission to take up space. Integrating the shadow didn't make Emma cold or selfish. It made her whole. She still cares deeply about others. She still offers support and love and empathy. But she does it from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. Choice rather than compulsion. Strength rather than depletion. You are not what happened to you, Jung reminds us. You are what you choose to become. If you recognize yourself in Emma's story, if you've been the invisible empath, the endless giver, the one who disappears to make others comfortable, maybe it's time to snap. Not the loud, dramatic kind of snap that draws attention and demands recognition. The quiet kind, the decisive kind, the kind that honors your soul instead of betraying it. The kind where you turn off the car and drive home to yourself. Your silence isn't abandonment. It's a return. Your boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. Your needs aren't selfish. They're human. Let this be your permission to choose yourself, to protect your energy, to love with boundaries, to give from fullness rather than emptiness. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your unmet self, waiting for you to finally choose her, waiting for you to stop performing love and start requiring it, waiting for you to remember that you were never meant to disappear. You were meant to be seen, fully, completely, as you are, not as who you pretend to be to keep others comfortable. The question isn't whether you're worthy of love. The question is whether you're brave enough to stop accepting less than you deserve. What would change in your life if you stopped performing love and started requiring it? The answer to that question might just save you. And saving yourself? That's not selfish. That's sacred. If this resonated with you, take a moment to sit with whatever feelings are coming up. Your emotional response is information. Honor it. Notice what part of Emma's journey felt most familiar. Notice what part scared you most. Notice what part you're not ready to face yet. That's where your work begins. Your healing doesn't require anyone else's permission. Your boundaries don't need anyone else's approval. Your worth isn't up for debate. You're not too much. You're not too sensitive. You're not asking for too much. You are asking for what you've always deserved. To be seen, valued, and loved for who you are. The empath's greatest gift isn't their ability to feel for others. It's their courage to finally feel for themselves.